I try not to talk about projects where I have skin in the game, but I do need to confess on this one. A few months back, I bought tons of FIFA Collect NFTs, against my better judgment, of course. And before you listen to this episode, I want you to know that I've tried to get in touch with their team for a variety of reasons, and if anything, just to have a relationship, because I run the First Mint. We cover sports, and our Twitter covers all the latest drops, sales, prices, all that good stuff. And I wanted kind of a relationship with them so that we could talk about their project a little bit easier on our channels and make sure that it's something that we wanted our audience to be exposed to. And honestly, see what their plan is, know who they are, who's running this project. Maybe they'd even want to work together. My attempts were actually pretty unsuccessful. I poked around their Discord and I was referred to one person who manages collaborations. And that person literally gave me the runaround. I quite literally asked them, quite simply, could we have access to some of your sales data? I just want to see who's spending a lot of money on the platform, or not even who, just how much volume is there on the marketplace. I even sent them our First Mint deck being like, hey, this is who we are as a company in case, you want to know a little bit more. And naturally now, flash forward a couple months, the World Cup is here. And if you have subscription TV of any kind, you've no doubt watched the Netflix documentary about FIFA and its corrupt past. I haven't seen it yet, but I have no doubt that it does a good job of diving into everything that's kind of wrong with the organization and also explaining how it's basically this international body that is kind of unregulated. So today on the First Mint, we're going to dive into this FIFA NFT project and FIFA's broader plans for crypto. Then we're going to look at just how FIFA makes their money and whether digital collectibles can actually fit into that. We're also going to talk to Christopher Gaffrey, associate professor at NYU, who's spent the last 15 to 20 years researching urbanization and mega events like the World Cup and Olympics, and describes the people who run those events as a nefarious cast of characters that does these things. Because it wouldn't be an episode about FIFA without that juicy corruption part. The World Cup is upon us, folks, and it is nowhere near ready for Web3. What's up, everyone? It's LG Doucette, and you're listening to The First Mint, a podcast about Web3, business, and sports. Before we get to the show, a word from our sponsors. Digital collectors and creators, listen up. The Gaia Marketplace is your home to list, buy, sell, and trade your flow-based digital collectibles, from legendary NBA Top Shot moments to newer projects like Dimension X, where you can bring your NFTs in-game and play to earn crypto. Throw your NFTs on the marketplace quicker than ever with Gaia's bulk listing tool, then grab some popcorn, kick back, and watch the action. Head over to ongaia.com to get started. That's ongaia.com. Nothing on today's show should be considered financial or trading advice of any kind. Please do your own thorough research and make your own trading decisions. This is not advice. For the purpose of this episode, I'm going to be referring to the sport by its proper name, football. Now, there are tons of football projects out there in Web3, specifically in NFTs, and some of them actually have some pretty good traction. Most notably is French company SoRare, which has about $700 million in funding and allows users to play in fantasy football, the soccer kind, where they set lineups every couple days and can play for free kind of in unpaid tournaments and buy and sell limited cards for cash prizes. The platform has over 100,000 users and recently deployed an NBA product that I'm a huge fan of and participant in. After that, there's Dapper Labs' La Liga Galazos, a collectible platform featuring the world's second largest soccer league that just released. There's WAGMI United, an NFT project that owns Crawleytown FC, a Division II team in the Premier League. And there's Socios, which has fan tokens, which I'm still unsure of what exactly they do, but they trade by like the millions every day. So maybe we'll have to do a separate episode about Socios. After that, there's tons of other kind of gamified projects, a lot of other projects that have bought some of the licensed IP from some of the leagues, and others that are creating their own kind of native NFT kind of gamified formats. It's a very abundant space. There are a lot of really passionate football fans out there and founders trying to build something in Web3 related to the sport. And when this FIFA project came along a few months back, I was actually pretty excited because honestly, the World Cup is when I watched the absolute most football. And this year, the Canadian men's team even made it for like the first time in 40 years. The project launched where they would sell $5 packs that contained 3 NFTs each. And those NFTs would be like actual video highlights from past men's and women's World Cups. But there was something a little bit odd about that launch, something that didn't quite feel right to me. The price point was very accessible. That's nice, $5. And you could actually pay with your credit card quite easily, which to me is very important. This is a major entry point for normies. But the part that felt wrong was the supply of these NFTs. FIFA was selling over 530,000 of these packs, aiming to collect almost $3 million in the process, which is an insane oversupply, even for the most ardent collector. In subsequent weeks, they would release even more drops of similar sizes, selling packs for $5 and $10. To date, they have sold 240,000 packs, totaling just about $1.2 million in revenue. The project itself, although, not overpriced but oversupplied, is fairly simple. They drop these new NFTs. They have a marketplace where most of the NFTs sell for $1, unless you get a rare one that sells for like 10 or $60. They have ultra rare NFTs that sell for a couple thousand, and they have promises that they made in their community of some challenges coming soon for holders. The project bills itself as, here at FIFA Plus, we decided that it's time to share our amazing archive to enable fans to own unforgettable moments and epic editions from the FIFA archives and digital collectibles. So we launched FIFA Plus Collect, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build a personal digital collection and be part of the richest and most authentic football legacy of all time, the FIFA World Cup. So it's a collectibles platform, pretty simple, and it was advertised and still is being advertised on a lot of different websites on the internet. Like literally just go to like ESPN or whatever, you'll see those ads. And for a while, it was actually even linked on FIFA's homepage saying, hey, come and get these digital collectibles. So it definitely has the backing of FIFA. Now, the project is hosted on the Algorand blockchain, which is a chain founded by Italian MIT professor Silvio Micali and hailed as one of the greenest cryptos around. They've raised $66 million so far and hold the 30th largest market cap across all cryptocurrencies, despite everything that happened last week, at just over $2.1 billion. Algorand has a variety of applications that I don't really dabble into, and I don't think really have anything to do with sports. I'm not going to get into them, but from what I understand, it is pretty well respected, and they have partnered with a few other smaller sports brands like Formula E. The founder himself, Micali, has won the Turing Award in computer science and the Gödel Prize in theoretical computer science and RSA Prize in cryptography, so himself a pretty smart guy when it comes to this stuff. As for the deal, it's actually not a license. Algorand didn't really buy the license. It's a direct partnership. So it's likely that most of the money goes to FIFA and that Algorand gets a little cut. But really, it seems like the main trade-off has been that Algorand gets the exposure and advertising. So again, there is no middle company that has the rights like SoRare or Dapper. Rather, it is a direct partnership. And although the exact terms were not disclosed, it was stated that this is a third-tier regional partnership covering North America and European rights, and that it's part of FIFA's larger revenue goal of $7 billion, which comes to an end at the end of its 4-year cycle at Qatar this month. Now, I'm not saying they're trying to make $7 billion from NFTs, but that's a very important number to keep in mind, and the idea that FIFA does business in 4-year cycles. So we're going to revisit that in just a minute. Now, FIFA has other innovations going down at the World Cup, such as a partnership with Crypto.com, who is also a major sponsor, where they recently held 5 different auctions for NFTs on Crypto.com, with all proceeds going to charity, where they auctioned off kind of like memorabilia, little NFTs of famous footballers like England's Michael Owen. Each of them, I checked, sold for like $1,000, $2,000, so not that big of a whoop. They're also doing a very interesting like IRL real-life activation at the World Cup. From the website Being Crypto, in addition to these NFTs, Visa will also provide an opportunity for fans to create their own during the event. Fans attending the World Cup can participate in 4-minute-long 6-on-6 matches occurring at the FIFA Fan Festival, which I'm assuming is something that happens on the ground. The interactive playing field will capture their movements and create unique GIFs in the color of their favorite national team. Players can then choose to receive their GIF as an NFT through a Crypto.com account. Now, honestly, that actually sounds pretty cool, but I'm not sure if it's going to be like a massive footprint, but it would be pretty neat if they did manage to pull that off and it happens as cool as it sounds. Again, it's hard to do these types of NFT integrations, so I don't know if it actually will happen. So for a sports brand as big as FIFA, all this seems like a pretty big step forward. And similar to what other sports leagues are doing, they are creating some kind of digital innovation and partnering with reputable blockchain companies. And honestly, the NFT numbers that I discussed, a few $1 million, that might be a lot for us, but that's like nothing compared to what FIFA makes in a year. And before we get to those numbers, if you don't know already, you have to understand, before we talk about the World Cup, the sheer magnitude of the event in terms of popularity. In 2018, last World Cup, the final match between France and Croatia recorded 516 million viewers alone. That is 432 million more viewers than the Super Bowl. which is the most like watched freaking thing every year. That's the final match. Just the final match had over 500 million people watching it around the world. Now, to help me understand FIFA and its finances and the way that it does things, I contacted Christopher Gaffrey at NYU, an expert on this type of stuff.
Christopher Gaffrey. I am an associate professor at New York University. Much of my research for the past 15, 20 years has been on the intersection of urbanization and mega events being World Cup, sports mega events, World Cup, Olympics, Expos.
Chris actually shared with me a report put out by FIFA every year about their revenue and spending, which he tells me that as a nonprofit, FIFA has always been required to do and has actually gotten better at in recent years.
One of the things that has improved since the scandals of 2015 is FIFA's accounting about where their money goes. So this kind of report, this annual budget report, would not have been available even 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And so they've been forced to engage in more transparency. Of course, it's limited.
All right, so let's take a look at this report. As mentioned earlier, FIFA looks at their finances in terms of cycles of World Cups. So for this one, it says here in the report that they are expecting $6.4 billion from this cycle, most of it coming during the calendar year of the Cup, so this year. In 2021, last year, they made $766 million of that $6.4 billion. So not very much, but it still illustrates for us kind of what the buckets are of where they get money. So out of that $766 million, $123 million came from TV rights, $131 came from marketing rights to sponsors, which we'll get back to in a second. $12 million came from tickets from smaller events and I guess the upcoming event, and $320 million, almost 50%, was titled other income, which I asked Chris about, and he told me that it was actually the U.S. Department of Justice paying money to FIFA that FIFA had paid to them.
Took hundreds of millions of dollars from corrupt FIFA officials and then actually gave that back to FIFA. And so there's some of that in there, but it is a pretty big number. It's like 260 something million dollars.
Pretty jarring, honestly. And it also kind of illustrates how deeply entrenched FIFA is into world politics and governing bodies. Now, they do detail in this report, again, how they made money, but they also detail how they spend it. And Chris told me that FIFA, as a nonprofit, is required to distribute all of their earnings on a yearly basis, so they have to spend all that money that they make. But as per Chris, this is a part that's also super ripe for, of course, corruption. So what happens when they make this profit? Like, what's the process for, you were telling me that, you know, the cartel kind of just funnels it into their own pockets. Is that where most of the money goes? Like, is that the kind of their inflow of they take this money and then...
Well, they're obliged to distribute it, and they do this through their Sport for Development and Peace programming. They are obliged to distribute a lot of those funds, and so they have a lot of education programs. A national federation, say Botswana, will receive $2.5 million for developing plastic football pitches and then having programming to go with that. Of course, most of that money that goes to the federations, at every time you transfer that money, there's no guarantee that the federation is going to use that. And so because FIFA has 200 something federations, they are obliged to distribute funds, but they are not obliged to have any audit of where those funds are spent. And so this is where the corruption really comes in, is that if you can transfer funds to a organization that is itself not transparent, you are nominally fulfilling your duties as a nonprofit organization to distribute the funds among your members, but those members themselves are frequently highly corrupt, and they're the very ones that are voting for the president. And so if you need 3 or 4 votes from the African bloc to secure your presidency, you can distribute funds the year before and say, okay, well, our auditors are not coming to you this year, so go build yourself a nice new villa on the beach or whatever.
The total spent on all those activities in 2021, $554 million. Now, other things that it says that FIFA spent their money on, they spent $234 million on competitions and events, such as the FIFA Arab Cup and senior tournaments, $44 million in football governance, which helps players who haven't been paid by their clubs if they've had some kind of dispute, and $52 million in marketing and TV broadcasting, where FIFA is basically trying to drive digital innovation in how they put the sport out there. It also states $192 million for governance and administration, which I'm assuming is like salaries. The report even touts that number, $192 million, as a 19% reduction in budget, saying, and this is in the FIFA report, saying that they were able to save money on travel and now that they have their meetings online, but somehow still spend $192 million on governance and administration. So to circle all this back to Web3, those couple $1 million of NFTs aren't, again, really too much in the grand scheme, because in that report, it also states how much money FIFA makes in licensing rights, which includes retail, merch, and esports. And that's about $180 million that they made in 2021 from licensing. And according to Chris, that's most likely just collected from their sponsors.
But so the national teams have their merch partners, and Adidas, Nike, Reebok will have deals with FIFA, but more for advertising during FIFA events. And so the merchandising rights tend to go through the national federations and those big companies.
So this all leaves FIFA at a bit of a weird spot in Web3 and how they might leverage the technology and the community in the space to make even more money. Now, they do have some elements that have made some brands successful in the space, like big names and collaborators and access to them, somewhat innovative ideas and a desire to deploy those ideas. They're kind of middle of the pack with other sports leagues in terms of their foray, although I wouldn't really call FIFA a sports league, more of like a global organization. And of course, they have the world's most international game in football, so they have kind of a broader access to more people. Obviously, the sheer magnitude of how many people actually watch the game, that is something that could be pretty tremendous and where they could have far more of an impact on, crypto adoption than anything really that the NBA or NFL could ever do. Now, a lot of people in the press touted FIFA's efforts with this World Cup in crypto as being like highly innovative and a major boost to adoption. I don't really agree. I don't think that what they've done is innovative or that interesting for the average consumer. I think that in the future, what they could do is implement like NFT ticketing, because obviously people would love to have like a far more digital and verified version of their ticket if they spent thousands of dollars going to the World Cup. And I think they could actually take some of these highlights that they're selling as NFTs and mint them instantly during the games for people that are watching them. But those types of ideas maybe will be up to them and Algorand to implement for the next time around. But obviously, we're concerned about the corruption part. It ain't good. We don't want to promote NFTs. We don't want to buy NFTs that have all this corruption behind them, especially after what happened this past week in crypto. And it wouldn't be right to conclude this episode of The First Mint without giving a glimpse into FIFA's true corruption and immoral standing as a governing sports body. Now, you don't need to go far, or very far at all to find evidence of this. They've been involved in like millions of scandals. And the biggest one in recent times has been related to this actual World Cup that's coming up next week and the way in which they've built the stadiums. Basically, what they've been doing since the World Cup is in Qatar and not a lot of people live there, especially not workers, to build stadiums, is they've been bringing in migrant workers from Southeast Asia and like allegedly kind of imprisoning them, taking their passports to make them work and build these stadiums. Last year, a report in The Guardian estimated that 6,500 workers had died building these stadiums in the past 10 years. And to give you a sense of how current FIFA president Gianni Infantino reacts to this type of criticism, we can turn to his response last May when he was asked about these mistreated migrant workers, in which he said, "When you give work to somebody, even in hard conditions, you give him dignity and pride. It's not charity. You don't make charity. You don't give something to somebody and say, stay where you are. I give you something and I feel good." Yeah, so he thinks these mistreated workers should be grateful, and he thinks that they should gain pride from the hard work. And more recently, a few different countries participating in the World Cup, like England, Wales, and a few other European nations, all announced that they would be wearing armbands at the World Cup with the words "One Love" on them to basically protest Qatar's anti-LGBTQ laws. And that's not the only activist thing going down. There's actually been some people calling for Iran to be banned from the tournament, not for what's going on right now in the country of Iran, but for recently supplying weapons to Russia, which itself was actually banned from the tournament earlier this year after they invaded Ukraine. In response to both of those activist causes, Infantino sent out a letter to every single country showing up this year in the World Cup. And this happened just literally last week. He sent a letter to all of them asking them to just focus on football. Man, Scams, corruption, shady dealings, international bad actors. Honestly, kind of sounds like crypto to me. Now, thank you for listening, folks. It's not always fun to do episodes about corruption, but I know that some people do enjoy it. If you have any thoughts or comments, hit us up on Twitter at @TheFirstMint or hit me up at LGDoucette. Would love to hear from you, or leave a comment on iTunes. That's always appreciated. Let us know how you felt about the episode, how you feel about the podcast revamp. Give us a rating. That is also very needed. Next couple weeks, we've got a few more exciting episodes. Can't really reveal them just yet because we're still kind of working on them, but I think you're going to like them. Otherwise, have yourselves a fantastic week, and we'll see you next week on The First Mint.